I raised my shotgun to defend my yard. Now the HOA lives with regret. People who once feared fines were finally free. Property of the free. Trespassers will be educated. My name's Jesse Ray Walker, and I've never been one to pick a fight. Grew up quiet in East Tennessee, spent 20 years in the Army, and then 10 more working search and rescue for FEMA. After that, all I wanted was peace. So when my wife Marlene and I moved to a dusty corner of Caldwell County, Texas, I thought I'd finally found it. 42 acres. Fenced, surveyed, bought fair and square. We had a double-wide trailer and an old barn that I'd converted into a workshop. My wife planted a small wildflower garden. We raised 2 goats, a dozen chickens, and a rescued coonhound named Whiskey. It was nothing fancy, but it was ours. We weren't technically in any subdivision. Our land was never part of the planned development they built next door about 10 years ago. That place, called Whispering Trails, had all the suburban trappings: paved roads, fake lakes, pastel houses that looked like clone toy models, and of course, the holy grail of suburban power, a homeowners association. Now, this HOA wasn't even legally connected to our property, but that didn't stop them from acting like they were royalty, and their queen A woman named Delilah Bradford. You might call her a Karen. I called her a menace. Blonde bob haircut, always wearing white tennis shoes, always carrying an iPad like it was a badge. She introduced herself as the president for life of Whispering Trails HOA, and from the first day she saw us moving in, she had a problem. "You can't just plop down livestock like that," she'd said, striding across my fence line like it was a suggestion. "This area has a clear aesthetic code." "Lady," I told her, "you ain't got jurisdiction here. This is Walker property, not part of your development." She didn't like that one bit. Didn't stop her, either. She started small left notes on our gate. "Your fence is not up to code. This property must be reviewed for zoning compliance. HOA will issue a fine." Then it escalated. Complaints filed with the county, then bogus code enforcement calls. I showed up in court 3 times, and every time the judge ruled in my favor. You'd think she'd give up. She didn't. The day things blew up was hotter than a welding torch. It was August, no clouds, 104 degrees in the shade. I'd just come back from town with feed for the goats when I saw the wreckage. The side gate was torn clean off. Our wooden swing set the one I'd built for my grandkids when they came to visit was shattered. One of the goats had run loose into the ditch. My dog was barking like hell, and there, in the middle of my yard, was Delilah's white BMW SUV. Its front bumper was mashed in. The gate hung from her grill like some kind of war trophy. I stood there, slack-jawed. She was out of the vehicle, already taking photos of my yard. I strode over, boots crunching the dry grass. "What in the hell did you do?" She didn't flinch. "You left your gate unsecured," she said flatly. "I was performing a routine inspection. Your livestock was seen near the HOA easement. I have every right to ensure compliance with community standards." "That's criminal trespass," I growled. "You busted through a locked gate. You broke into private land." She waved me off like I was a gnat, and then she called the cops. "I have a hostile male on the premises." She told 911. "He's threatening me with a weapon. He has a gun." That was the last straw. Yes, I grabbed my shotgun. I didn't point it at her. I'm no fool, but I held it in both hands and stood in my yard while I waited. Because I knew how these calls go. 15 minutes later, the sheriff's deputies rolled in. They saw the broken gate, the destroyed swing set, the SUV stuck in my yard, and yet, their hands hovered near their belts. "Sir, please put down the weapon." "She came through my gate," I said calmly. "She destroyed my property. I didn't threaten her." Delilah was behind them, arms crossed, smug. I saw it in her eyes. She thought she won. That's when I said words I knew would change everything. "You should know something before this goes further. I'm a decorated veteran. I know the law, and I have cameras." I turned and pointed to the tree near the barn where my trail cam blinked red. I had footage. All of it. The deputies hesitated. Delilah looked nervous. Finally, I handed over the footage. My wife came out holding our phone, already on the line with our lawyer. And just like that, the air shifted. But it was only the beginning, because I soon discovered that Delilah hadn't just targeted me. No, she was running something bigger, something far more corrupt than anyone suspected, and I was about to drag it all into the sunlight. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Delilah's smug face and heard the deputies' hesitant voices, half-drawn pistols glinting in the Texas sun. My wife Marlene laid a hand on my shoulder around 5 a.m. "You know what this is, right?" she said quietly. "It's not about a fence, or goats, or your swing. This is about control." And she was right. I sat at the kitchen table with a hot mug of black coffee and pulled out my old laptop. I hadn't looked too hard into whispering trails before because, frankly, I didn't care what my neighbors did as long as they stayed off my land. But after last night, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Whispering Trails wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a gated fiefdom, and Delilah was ruling like a queen with a scepter made of bureaucracy. I started combing through county property records, digging into parcel numbers, plat maps, HOA registration filings, anything I could get without needing a subpoena. It didn't take long to find something strange. The original HOA charter was filed in 2012, about 2 years after the first houses were built. But the charter was only approved for phase 1 of development, about 60 lots total. Our land never part of that, not even adjacent. In fact, a small section of land between us and Whispering Trails was still owned by the county and marked as unzoned greenbelt. Then things got real interesting. In 2017, a second filing had been submitted, Whispering Trails Community Expansion. It included another 30 properties, some of which weren't even built yet. The expansion filing had dozens of forged digital signatures, supposedly from new residents. I clicked through one by one. A few names I recognized, some of Delilah's inner circle, but most fake, completely fabricated. And guess who submitted the expansion form? Delilah Marie Bradford. My fingers tightened on the coffee mug. This wasn't just overreach. It was fraud. She'd faked an expanded jurisdiction to give her HOA more power, likely, so she could collect more dues and enforce more rules. I even found a Venmo account where residents had been paying her directly instead of through a real management company. Marlene leaned over my shoulder, reading silently. "Babe," she said, "you just found the crack in the dam." She was right again, and I wasn't the only one she'd harassed. I started knocking on doors. Not at Whispering Trails, no. I had to be smart. I drove around the surrounding area, talking to folks who'd lived near the HOA for years. One man, Sam Rogers, owned a repair shop down the road. He'd installed fencing for one of the original homeowners and told me something that chilled me. Delilah came out and told me to stop mid-job, he said, shaking his head. Said I needed HOA permission. I told her to take it up with the homeowner. Next thing I know, my business got slapped with zoning violations I'd never even heard of. Another woman, Pilar, said her daughter had gotten harassed by HOA agents for biking through the neighborhood on public roads. They claimed she was loitering. The girl was 11. Over the next 3 days, I met 10 people. All of them had similar stories: trespassing, intimidation, made-up fines, threats of liens that never appeared on any official county document. Delilah wasn't just playing HOA president, she was running a shadow racket. And most folks were too intimidated or confused to fight back. But I wasn't most folks. I contacted a local journalist I knew from my FEMA days, Jalen King, an independent investigative reporter who ran a small but fiery newsletter out of Austin. I sent him everything I had: documents, video footage, testimonies, forged signatures. He called me an hour later. "You sitting down?" "Jesse," he said, "because this goes deeper than a fake HOA. Turns out, Delilah had filed a business license 3 years back, Whispering Trails Community Management, LLC. On paper, it looked like a legit HOA support service. In reality, it was just her personal piggy bank. Jalen found that she'd received over $138,000 in unreported dues, fees, and maintenance charges in 2 years, and hadn't paid a dime in taxes on it. This wasn't neighborhood drama anymore. It was full-blown white-collar fraud. Now it was time to act. I scheduled a meeting, not with Delilah, with the residents of Whispering Trails themselves. I printed flyers, knocked on doors, used language they couldn't ignore. Are you paying dues to a scam? Join us for a community meeting before you pay another dollar. We held the gathering in the local fire station hall, right outside Whispering Trails boundary. 53 people showed up. I stood before them and did what I'd done countless times before in FEMA briefings and Army debriefs. I told the truth, plain and hard. I laid out the maps, the fake filings, the money trail, the Venmo receipts. I played the video of her crashing my gate, the one she swore was community property. And then I told them the part that hit home the hardest. Delilah has convinced many of you that you're powerless, that you owe her, that she represents law and order. But the only thing she represents is herself. And you don't have to keep giving her your money or your fear. There was a pause, 10 seconds of dead silence. Then, a woman in the front row raised her hand. Her name was Lynette. She lived 2 doors down from Delilah, and she said, "What do we do now?" That was the moment the tide turned. We weren't just victims anymore. We were an army forming in plain sight. And our first target, Whispering Trails. HOA headquarters, the spare room in Delilah's house that doubled as her throne room. It was time to flip the script. 2 days after that meeting, the game changed completely. Delilah must have caught wind of the gathering because by the time I woke up the next morning, there was a freshly printed newsletter from the HOA in every mailbox, bold red font, stamped across the top. Beware of disinformation, HOA under attack by a dangerous neighbor. That dangerous neighbor was me. She accused me of inciting rebellion, spreading lies, and threatening to destabilize the harmony of the community. She also warned that anyone who engaged with me could face legal action. Funny thing was, she didn't realize how many people had already switched sides, and we weren't afraid anymore. That same day, Lynette and a few others who'd attended the meeting launched a private Facebook group called Whispering Truths. In 24 hours, it had over 180 members, almost half the neighborhood. People were sharing stories, videos, emails, HOA warnings they'd kept tucked away for years. Delilah's illusion of power cracked like cheap drywall in a storm. And me, I started gathering receipts. Not just financial ones, I mean testimonies, signed statements, residents documenting every dollar they'd ever paid her. I set up a shared Google Drive and invited Jalen, the reporter, to start archiving everything for legal reference. We even uncovered her old job history. Delilah had been dismissed from a real estate firm for unethical practices 6 years ago. This woman had been running her scam for a long time. She just finally hit someone who pushed back. We decided it was time to hit her where it hurt her legal footing. First step, file a cease and desist letter against Delilah for harassment and defamation. Through my attorney, we sent it certified. Then we sent one to her phony company, Whispering Trails Community Management, LLC. Step 2, county audit request. A friend of mine who worked in property records helped us submit a formal request for investigation into the forged HOA expansion charter. Within days, county clerks were digging into the documents. A clerk called me and said, "Jesse, this thing's a mess. Half these signatures are typed, not signed. Some addresses don't even exist." The real hammer came a week later, when Jalen published his expose, headline HOA, or Hustle the Woman Behind the Fake Authority, controlling Whispering Trails. It went viral, locally picked up by multiple news outlets. Suddenly, Delilah wasn't just the annoying HOA lady. She was a fraud under public scrutiny. Residents started withholding dues. Contractors she'd hired refused to return calls. Someone posted a drone photo of her house, and you could see the trash piling in her driveway. No one was listening to her demands anymore. That's when she panicked and did something desperate. She called an emergency HOA assembly at the community pool, a meeting she demanded all homeowners attend. Of course, she banned me, said I was a non-member and a danger. Didn't matter. Half the seats were empty. The half that came, they filmed it. We watched the video in the Facebook group later that night. Delilah stood behind a folding table, red-faced, flanked by two men she introduced as security advisors. One of them, no joke, had a fake badge clipped to his belt. Said private compliance officer. Lynette uploaded a zoomed-in screenshot. The badge was plastic. In the video, Delilah yelled about community decay, about infiltration by outsiders, and claimed I was trying to incite rural sovereignty to destroy suburban governance. It was ridiculous and terrifying, because in her voice, there was desperation, the kind that drives people to act recklessly. Sure enough, 2 nights later, around 11:30 p.m., I heard tires on gravel outside. Whiskey barked like a banshee. I stepped out with my flashlight and saw a pickup truck speeding away from my gate. And there, hanging from the fence, a sign, spray-painted across cardboard, in red, "Back off or get what's coming." My blood ran cold, but I didn't flinch. I called the sheriff, filed a report, sent the photo to Jalen. He added it to the article, and then I turned on the cameras. All of them. Because this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was criminal intimidation. The next morning, something incredible happened. A group of Whispering Trails residents, led by a man named Charles Henson, a retired teacher, filed a motion to form a new, resident-led board. Under Texas law, if more than 51% of homeowners in an HOA sign a petition, they can remove and replace their board entirely. They had 61%. Delilah was finished, but she didn't leave quietly. She lawyered up, threatened lawsuits, claimed unconstitutional seizure of private governance, even tried to lock the community meeting room. Didn't matter. At the next HOA election, she lost in a landslide. Lynette became the new president. Charles was named treasurer. And me, they asked me to be the new compliance officer. I declined. I told them I'd protect my land, but I wasn't interested in rules. They laughed and said, "That's exactly why we trust you." I'll never forget the look on Delilah's face when she was handed the certified termination notice. It was Charles who delivered it, dressed in khakis and a navy vest, clipboard in hand, flanked by 2 county deputies there to enforce the new petition order. She tried to slam the door in their faces, but Charles simply tucked the paper into her mailbox and walked away like the gentleman he was. That paper wasn't just a letter, it was a reckoning. Delilah Bradford had officially been removed as president of the Whispering Trails HOA. Her shady company, Whispering Trails Community Management, LLC, was no longer recognized by the county. The bank account she'd used to siphon off nearly $140,000 in dues was now frozen pending investigation. The residents she'd once lorded over, they had turned into her jury, and the verdict was unanimous. But she wasn't done trying to fight. The very next day, she showed up at the new HOA board's first meeting uninvited, unhinged, and completely unraveling. I was there too, standing near the back wall with my arms folded, just watching. I didn't need to say anything. Delilah did all the talking for me. "This is illegal," she shouted at Lynette. "You're not real. I built this community. You're letting him," she pointed at me, "corrupt everything with his rural militia." The room stayed silent. Lynette stood calmly behind the lectern, her voice firm. "This isn't about Jesse. It's about restoring trust. You forged documents, extorted money, and abused authority. Your reign is over." Delilah. Security escorted her out. No one clapped. No one jeered. There was no need to humiliate her. The collapse was humiliation enough. That same week, Jalen's second article dropped. Headline: HOA Queen Pin faces fraud charges after years of suburban tyranny. It had everything. Bank statements showing unreported income, copies of forged signatures on HOA charter extensions, videos of her yelling at residents, trespassing, even physically removing a no trespassing sign from my property while being filmed. And yes, audio from the night she sent those fake cops to my home. One of the men she'd hired for community compliance had come forward anonymously, saying she paid them $200 each to wear security-style uniforms and scare me into dropping the shotgun incident. When they realized I had actual law enforcement training and ties to Homeland Security, they bailed. She wasn't just disliked now. She was infamous. Public outrage exploded. The local news station ran a story that night. Residents from other communities nearby came forward with similar HOA horror stories, some even involving Delilah when she worked in real estate years ago. Turns out she'd been fired for forging lease documents on a rental duplex. A class action lawsuit began forming. More than 45 homeowners filed joint civil complaints. The county district attorney began building a criminal case. Even the IRS got involved. And just like that, the mighty fell. Delilah's assets were frozen. Her car, a shiny black Audi she once bragged about, was repossessed. Her management company website was taken down. She moved out of her Whispering Trails home in the middle of the night, packed everything into a U-Haul, and vanished like a ghost. Rumor has it she relocated to Arizona, started trying to form a new private neighborhood alliance under a different name. But the internet doesn't forget. Every time someone Googles her name, they see those headlines. And the story of how the people she tried to bully stood up, stood tall, and won. Back in Whispering Trails, things changed fast and for the better. The new HOA board voted unanimously to eliminate all fraudulent fees issued under Delilah's term. Refund residents who'd paid dues beyond what was legally required. Partner with a real legal HOA advisor to keep everything transparent. Host quarterly open forums where every homeowner could ask questions, express concerns, and even vote on policy. They even added new language to their bylaws forbidding the hiring of private compliance officers without board and legal approval. But my favorite part, they installed a brand new swing set at the edge of my land, right where mine used to be, before Delilah destroyed it and named it the Freedom Swing. Lynette said it was a symbol of standing your ground, of knowing your rights, of never letting anyone bully you in your own backyard. It didn't end there. Marlene and I started hosting monthly grill-outs for the neighborhood, nothing fancy. Hot dogs, cornbread, and iced tea. Folks came with their kids, brought lawn chairs, laughed for the first time in months. People who once believed they had no voice were finally talking. 6 months after Delilah's fall, Whispering Trails didn't just feel different, it was unrecognizable. Not because of the paint jobs or the cleaned-up common areas, because of the people. The same neighbors who once pulled their blinds shut when Delilah knocked were now knocking on each other's doors to ask how they could help. Old-timers who kept to themselves started showing up to barbecues. Families that once feared fines for sidewalk chalk or garden gnomes now decorated freely and proudly. And the best part, the fear was gone. We had taken something rotten, something fake, built on lies and control, and turned it into something real. I still remember the first time someone thanked me. A man named Jorge, a father of 3 who had been fined for unsafe fencing because his daughter hung a dream catcher on their front gate. Delilah made him remove it. He told me that after the HOA collapse, he put it back up this time with solar lights around it. His kids danced in the yard that night. I know it sounds silly, he said, tearing up, but my girls felt like they got their home back. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd let her take away. It hit me hard. Because I'd felt the same. I'd moved to Whispering Trails to raise animals and drink black coffee under the Texas sky. I didn't want drama. I didn't want politics. I just wanted peace. And for a while, that dream had been ripped from me. But in standing up for my land, my rights, and the neighbors too afraid to speak, I found something I didn't expect purpose. I still had the shotgun. It stayed on the mantle, unloaded but polished. A quiet reminder of that night when everything changed. Not because I pulled the trigger, but because I stood tall without needing to. It was never about violence. It was about boundaries, moral ones, legal ones, the kind that define who we are when no one's watching. One evening, as summer melted into fall, the new HOA board invited me to speak at the community forum. I hadn't planned on it, but Marlene nudged me and said, "They need to hear it from you." So I stepped up to the mic, and I told them the truth. I talked about that night, about how scared I was not of the fake cops, but of losing the thing I love most, freedom. I told them about how easy it is to fall into silence, to believe that if we just comply, the bad people will go away. But I also told them what I'd learned. Justice doesn't come when you wait for it. It comes when you become it, one stand, one voice, one truth at a time. There was a long pause when I finished. Then Charles, our new treasurer, stood and clapped once, and the whole room followed. The story didn't end with Delilah. After the press died down, I learned she'd been charged with fraudulent misrepresentation, forgery of public documents, criminal impersonation, misuse of funds. She took a plea deal, 3 years probation, community service. She avoided jail, but she didn't avoid justice because her reputation was gone and her grip on power shattered beyond repair. Today, Whispering Trails isn't perfect. No place is. But when the new bylaws were published online for residents to vote on, the very first rule printed in bold was this: no resident may be fined, punished, or intimidated by any officer or agent without a majority vote in due process. And under that, my name, they called it the Jesse Clause. I tried to argue against that, but Charles said, "Too late. We already passed it." Now, I spend most days out back with whiskey, tending my land, helping neighbors with fencing, sometimes just sitting in my rocker watching the sunset. I see kids playing again. I hear music drifting from windows, and I smell the scent of barbecues, freedom, and a community healed. The scars remain, but they remind us how strong we've become. If you've ever been silenced by authority, bullied by a fake system, or scared into submission in your own home, you're not alone. Speak up, stand your ground, know your rights, and if you've lived through something like this, share your story, because the only thing more dangerous than a fake HOA is a silent community.